Buckle up, because what's coming isn't rumor or rumor adjacent. It's a fuse already burning, a story Hollywood prayed would stay buried. Beyond the velvet ropes, the perfect smiles, the curated feeds and flashbulbs, there's an alleged truth so volatile it could fracture alliances and legacies and send shockwaves through an industry built on silence. Tonight, one name is echoing through back rooms and boardrooms alike: Teyana Taylor. And one voice has finally cracked a door that was sealed shut for years: Tasha K. Because if the claims she's sharing on her podcast are even partially real, this isn't about clout or controversy anymore. This is about trust, risk, and a secret no one wanted to touch. Insiders whisper that private documents, sensitive test results, and recorded conversations are now being pulled into a storm so intense some are calling it an industry-wide emergency. There are murmurs of a concealed condition, allegations of exposure, and suggestions that powerful figures may have been unknowingly pulled into danger. Fans are stunned. Executives are scrambling. And behind closed doors, phones won't stop ringing. Lawyers are racing the clock, and reputations are being triaged in real time. Because if even a sliver of this story holds up, this stops being celebrity drama. It becomes a reckoning, a collapse, a moment that could permanently redraw the image of one of Hollywood's most guarded stars. So before we go any further, sit with this question. What if the person you trusted most was carrying the secret that could change everything? Because once the next revelation lands, there may be no way back.
Or was it a relationship? Here's the thing. I know TT got upset with me when I said that she was too clingy. It was given too much too soon.
What Tasha K revealed next was something Hollywood was never prepared to confront. Because in her telling, beneath the polished glow, the flawless appearances, and the image crafted frame by frame, there was a truth buried so deep it was never meant to breathe air. Not gossip, not online whispers, but what she described as records, warnings, and sealed information that had been locked away for years. She began her podcast differently that night. No laughter, no theatrics. Her voice was steady, measured, almost restrained. And that shift alone sent a chill through her audience. Because when Tasha K speaks like that, it means the weight is real. She told listeners that Hollywood isn't built on talent alone, but on silence, contracts, quiet understandings, and secrets dangerous enough to erase legacies overnight. Then she spoke the name Teyana Taylor, and everything seemed to stop. According to Tasha, this story wasn't new. It had lived in whispers, traded behind closed doors, passed carefully between insiders who knew better than to speak too loudly. But she said the silence was ending. She alleged that Teyana had been concealing a serious health matter for years. Not small, not temporary. Something that could affect personal relationships, professional ties, and anyone who crossed too closely into her world. Tasha insisted this wasn't speculation. She claimed to have reviewed documents, private messages, and leaked information, and what they suggested wasn't just shocking. It was alarming. She warned that several people who should have known allegedly didn't, and that consequences may have already happened without the public ever connecting the dots. She repeated her words carefully, allegedly, according to sources, based on documents, but the meaning was clear. This wasn't about one person anymore. This was about exposure, risk, and a ripple effect moving silently through powerful circles. Then she shifted to relationships. Tasha claimed that during Teyana's most fragile period, after her divorce, choices were made that would later raise serious questions. She described her as emotionally raw, freshly broken, moving too fast, possibly carrying something no one around her suspected. And then she named one person, Aaron Pierre. And in that moment, the story changed completely.
Nasty. I mean, hell, baby daddy ex-husband just got the police called on him by one of Ra Ali's alleged girls that she sent down there to have a threesome with him. And then the girlfriend that he was supposed to have threesome with didn't want to participate, and she only wanted it to be a twosome. And so allegedly he wanted to force her to do it anyway. So she had to call the police to tell the police she didn't want to participate.
When those words hung in the air, the energy shifted instantly. Listeners went silent, because this was no longer just about wellness or private struggles. This was about collapse, disorder, and choices spinning out of control. Tasha described someone coming undone, emotionally raw, moving without a safety net, pulling others into moments they never agreed to enter. She claimed that during this period, lines blurred, limits vanished, and situations formed that left people exposed to far more than they expected. And then came the moment that stunned everyone listening. Tasha suggested that Teyana's ex-husband, Amon Shumpert, may have been one of the earliest people impacted, not emotionally, but in a way that went much deeper. She never said it outright, but the pauses, the emphasis, the careful phrasing made the meaning hard to ignore. She implied that the divorce might not have been driven by heartbreak alone, but by fear. Fear of what had already occurred, and fear of what might surface next. According to her, once that separation happened, the pattern continued. She alleged that other powerful figures entered the picture, names that Hollywood shields carefully. Artists, actors, people with influence. Among them, Kanye West. And again, Aaron Pierre. Tasha claimed these connections were not casual, but formed during a time when she believed serious risks may already have existed. And she warned that this was where the story turned dangerous. Because now, she said, this wasn't about infidelity or scandal. It became about responsibility, about safety. She told her audience that if the information she reviewed was accurate, this was no longer a private matter. It was a systemic concern. She explained that behind closed doors, Hollywood has mechanisms for handling crises like this. NDAs, quiet settlements, confidential medical handling, reputation control. And she implied those systems may have already been put in motion. Phones lighting up, lawyers moving fast, agents trying to contain narratives before they escaped. Because once a health-related secret leaks, there is no way to direct where the fallout lands. Tasha said the most disturbing part wasn't the alleged condition itself. It was the silence. The idea that people who should have been informed may never have been told. That trust could have been broken in a way that can't be repaired. Then she returned to Aaron Pierre. This time, she described him as unprepared, newly visible, stepping into power circles he didn't yet understand, and possibly unaware of what he was walking into. She said his behavior afterward raised concerns, emotional dependence, confusion, a sense of clinging, like someone trying to make sense of something that blindsided them. And that's when she made another brutal observation. Those words landed with weight, because suddenly the narrative shifted again. From romance to rebound. From attraction to escape. From connection to survival. Tasha suggested the relationship was never built to last. It wasn't grounded in stability or transparency. It was built on avoidance. Avoidance of pain, of fallout, of a truth that was becoming harder to contain. She told listeners what unsettled her most wasn't the chatter. It was the pattern, the timing, the secrecy, the emotional volatility, and the number of people who may have stepped into a situation without knowing the full picture. By the time she reached the end of that segment, one thing was unmistakable. This was no longer a celebrity relationship story. This was the opening chapter of something darker. Because if even part of what she suggested was real, the next phase would not be about heartbreak. It would be about consequences. And as she paused, the audience felt it. The most dangerous part of the story hadn't been revealed yet. What Tasha K described next is when everything changed. Because according to her, the real threat was never emotional. It was systemic. She leaned in, lowered her voice, and said something that froze the moment. That this wasn't about love gone wrong. It was about risk, exposure, and a silent network that extended far beyond what anyone imagined. She claimed that once the alleged issue existed, every connection afterward carried potential consequences. Not speculation, but what she called a pattern of silence. According to Tasha, in elite circles, disclosures aren't handled like they are for ordinary people. They're managed, contained, controlled, sometimes buried. She described a system that protects images, not individuals. Doctors bound by confidentiality, lawyers sealing records, managers redirecting narratives. And inside that system, truth becomes negotiable. She told listeners that what disturbed her most was the timeline. Because based on what she claimed to have seen, the issue may have existed long before several major relationships began. And if that were true, people could have been placed at risk without ever knowing. She said there were whispers, quiet warnings, subtle distancing, but nothing reached the public until now. Then she turned to the emotional toll, because risk alone doesn't destroy bonds. Fear does. She described insiders noticing changes, isolation, mood swings, sudden exits, relationships ending overnight with no explanation. Not because people wanted to leave, but because staying felt dangerous. She suggested that at least one partner began asking questions. Difficult questions. Medical questions. And when those questions surfaced, everything collapsed. No statements. No closure. Just silence.
He sounds a little bit more needy than what she's used to. That's why she slides another hoe into the bedroom, because she ain't got time to be there. You know, she be traveling. She got 2 kids she got to fend for, you know what I'm saying? And she be on everybody's project, including her own. And she ain't got time to be settling down and cuddling and sucking on a man's ear to make him feel comfortable. And every time I saw them together, he was always like, and I'm like, why is he acting like Becky in the relationship? That's what he learned from them damn Beckys. For real. So, sucking on his ear. Y'all ain't ever heard that before? People that got sucking fixations, it's like a soothing mechanism, because he can't suck his thumb in public, so she would suck on it. Come on now. Jasmine, you've seen that before, right? I just felt like he just needed a breast to suck on. He just required too much attention. And you know, Teyana's a busy girl. So to me, I feel like, you know, for her, it was rebound. I can't say that word right now because we...
Then she returned to Aaron Pierre again, this time not as a rebound, but as a breaking point. She claimed this relationship was where the alleged secret became impossible to contain because he was different, more invested, more vulnerable, expecting stability, but instead finding confusion, secrecy, and emotional chaos. And what she said next unsettled listeners deeply. She claimed that after the relationship ended, people around him noticed distress, withdrawal, anxiety, signs of someone trying to process something they couldn't name. That's when Tasha made one of her most chilling statements. She said this was the moment it quietly became an industry warning. Not public, not official, but whispered. Managers calling managers. Agents warning agents. Doctors offering private advice. She alleged that certain people were discreetly encouraged to take precautions. No alerts, no announcements, just silent moves behind closed doors. Then she asked the question that shifted everything. What if it didn't stop with one connection? What if it didn't stop with 2? What if it was never contained at all? She told her audience that based on what she believed she uncovered, the alleged network extended further than anyone realized. Not just partners, but collaborators, artists, actors, producers, people sharing intimate spaces during tours, sets, and private gatherings. And then she mentioned a name that sent shockwaves through the chat. Leonardo DiCaprio. She didn't accuse. She didn't confirm. She only raised the possibility that if the pattern went unchecked, even the most protected levels of Hollywood could have been touched. And in that pause, everyone understood something crucial. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was a scenario of risk. She told listeners that silence, in moments like this, becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. Because the longer people remain unaware, the wider the damage spreads. And then she returned to behavior. She said the emotional imbalance, the neediness, the dependency, the constant seeking of reassurance, it all told a story. Not just of heartbreak, but of fear. And that's when she explained how the relationships themselves began revealing the cracks no one wanted to see. Those sentences changed the gravity of everything because the story veered once more, shifting from threat to flight, from exposure to misdirection. Tasha argued that the connection was never about romance. It was about endurance, constant motion, endless noise, refusing to stand still. Because stillness invites reflection, and reflection invites truth. She insisted that Teyana's calendar turned brutal. Relentless productions, non-stop flights, endless appearances, as if momentum itself was armor, a way to stay ahead of consequences. She said people close to the situation described her as unreachable during that period. Closed off, cautious, and terrified of letting anyone too near. And when someone did get close, they were pushed out just as quickly. She told her audience that heartbreak wasn't what ended those relationships. It was knowledge, something learned, something suspected, something impossible to unsee. And that, she claimed, was why the breakups were sudden. No slow unraveling, no final conversations, only silence. She then outlined what she labeled the containment stage, the moment when Hollywood allegedly realized the situation could detonate. She claimed that Reputation teams stepped forward. Stories were rerouted, angles reworked, timelines distorted. Instead of concern, the public received scandal, jealousy, creative tension, anything but the truth. And it succeeded. For years, fans argued over betrayal, ego, and drama. But no one asked the most dangerous question: who was being shielded? She told listeners the emotional cost was crushing. Insomnia, panic episodes, isolation, people disappearing from circles, avoiding closeness, living in terror of what a single result might expose. And according to her, one individual completely collapsed. She refused to name them, but described someone who spent months denying reality before finally searching for answers. Medical answers, confidential answers, answers that never reached headlines. And when those answers arrived, everything shifted, careers altered, deals changed, relationships vanished. She said from that moment forward, the story stopped being about one woman. It became about containment. Because if even one accusation broke into mainstream coverage, the damage would be permanent. Labels, studios, tours, all endangered. She told listeners this was why the response behind closed doors was immediate. Emergency meetings, crisis calls, strict orders to remain silent, and that silence kept the story buried. Until now. By the time Tasha reached the end of the segment, the tone had transformed completely. What began as gossip had become something darker, systemic, something powerful forces wanted erased. And as she inhaled before continuing, one reality felt unavoidable. If this chapter was true, the next would not center on love. It would center on panic, reputations collapsing, and an industry scrambling to outrun truth. By the time Tasha K reached this point in her podcast, the damage was already unfolding. Not publicly, not in headlines, but quietly inside the most guarded rooms in Hollywood. Because according to her, when these claims began circulating privately, the industry didn't respond with disbelief. It responded with fear. Phones rang after midnight. Meetings were scheduled off record. Law firms activated crisis units before any article existed. She told listeners insiders described the mood as panic wearing a suit. Not because the story was untrue, but because it was uncontrollable. And then she revealed something unsettling. She claimed that after the breakup with Aaron Pierre, Teyana didn't simply move on. She allegedly entered protection mode. According to Tasha, this was the moment image management became the priority. Stylists shifted messaging, publicists adjusted timelines, and every interview felt scripted. She alleged subtle attempts to weaken Aaron's credibility, quietly questioning his stability, framing him as volatile, painting him as obsessive, never attacking directly, only reshaping perception. And she warned her audience. When credibility erodes, truth becomes easy to bury. She claimed insiders noticed a sudden change in how Aaron was treated. Fewer invitations, stalled projects, cooling connections, as if someone had whispered something dangerous about him. And according to her, that whisper wasn't random. It was influence. She said this was when the story became strategic, because once fear enters the room, power takes over.
People think it was a PR relationship. I feel that it was. I feel like it was mutually beneficial. They both could use the PR. This helped her to distract from what was going on with Eamon. Is that his name, Jasmine?
It's Iman.
Now that he's,
Iman.
Iman. Okay, y'all know.
She described Hollywood as a system built on silence, and when silence is threatened, the system reacts. She told listeners this was when containment truly began. Narratives were rerouted. Instead of health questions, the public received heartbreak stories. Instead of exposure rumors, fans got relationship drama, cheating headlines, ego clashes, creative splits, anything but the real risk. And it worked for a while, because while fans debated loyalty, executives quietly minimized damage. She claimed behind the scenes certain individuals were advised to disappear. No carpets, no parties, no late shows. Testing appointments were arranged discreetly. Confidentiality documents were signed, and conversations that once felt casual suddenly carried legal weight, she said. One insider described it as a quarantine without fences, no announcements, just distance, distance from people, distance from situations, distance from questions no one wanted answered. And then she turned to social media, because according to her, the moment fragments of this story leaked online, Hollywood lost control. Private messages, anonymous blinds, coded posts. Fans noticed patterns, unexplained breakups, canceled appearances, sudden withdrawals, and with each unexplained choice, speculation grew. She told listeners that at one point a major label delayed a project without explanation. Another studio quietly rewrote a contract, and one A-list celebrity allegedly demanded new health disclosure clauses. No one explained why, but insiders knew. Something had shaken the industry. And that's when Tasha returned to the most controversial claim of all. That after the breakup, Teyana allegedly used influence to shape the narrative. Not through statements, not through interviews, but through access. She claimed certain journalists stopped asking questions. Certain bloggers went silent, and certain stories never survived legal review. She didn't accuse directly, but the meaning was clear. Power was being applied. And then she paused, lowered her voice, and said something that unsettled the room. That the emotional fallout from this situation was far worse than anyone realized. She described sleepless nights, panic attacks, people isolating themselves out of fear of tests, results, and consequences. She said insiders saw at least one person vanish from public life for months. No interviews, no sightings, no explanations, as if they were waiting for something. And then she returned to the relationship dynamic one final time, because she said the most revealing clue wasn't medical. It was emotional. She explained how Aaron's behavior now made sense. The need for reassurance, the desperation for comfort, the constant searching, like someone sensing danger without understanding it. And that's when she delivered the conclusion that sealed this chapter of the story. Those words hit like a final judgment, because the story shifted one last time, from romance to ruin, from chemistry to calculation, from scandal to concealment. Tasha implied that the relationship may never have been about love. It may have been about visibility, misdirection, rewriting narratives, keeping attention away from something far more dangerous unfolding out of sight. She said the timing alone was suspicious, arriving right after divorce, right after whispers, right before real questions could form, almost too flawless to be coincidence. She told her listeners this was Hollywood's oldest survival tactic. Not denial, but distraction. Launch a new story, unveil a new romance, flood screens with carefully staged moments. And while audiences argue about passion, the real threat quietly vanishes. She claimed this strategy bought time, months, even years, enough to adjust contracts, seal files, and allow people to disappear without explanation. But what no one expected was Tasha K. Because according to her, the reason she finally spoke was simple. She said people had been harmed, not emotionally, but physically, and silence had become immoral. She told her audience the most disturbing part was not celebrity behavior. It was the structure of protection, the way influence shields itself, the way truth suffocates under power, and the way those without leverage are left to absorb consequences alone. She said that if even one person had been unknowingly placed at risk, then this story demanded exposure, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how volatile. And she warned her listeners, this was only the beginning. Because once fear enters an industry, it leaves marks, legal marks, medical marks, digital marks, and eventually, someone speaks. She ended this section of the podcast with a sentence that froze the chat. That there were still names she had not revealed, still records she had not released, and still connections she had not exposed, not yet. Because according to her, the full blueprint would do more than expose relationships. It would expose systems. Systems that protect fame over safety, silence over honesty, and power over people. And as she prepared to continue, one truth became impossible to ignore. Hollywood was no longer facing gossip. It was facing a collapse of trust. Because if these allegations were even partly true, this was no longer about one star. It was about an industry that may have knowingly allowed danger to exist as long as no one spoke. And the most chilling part, someone finally did. And from this moment forward, nothing about this story could ever be contained again. And now here is the part no one in Hollywood wants you to hear. Because if even a fraction of these claims are true, this stops being celebrity drama. It becomes a story of betrayal at the highest level, of trust shattered behind closed doors, of an industry that chose silence instead of safety. Think about it. How many people trusted relationships they believed were real? How many careers were built on images that may have been carefully engineered? And how many lives were quietly placed at risk while cameras kept rolling and contracts kept getting signed? This is what happens when fame outweighs truth. When influence overpowers integrity. When reputations are guarded and consequences are buried. Because the most tragic part of the story is not the headlines. It's the people who may never know when the betrayal actually began. The partners who trusted without question. The insiders who stayed quiet. The executives who turned away. And the star at the center of it all, navigating fear, pressure, secrecy, and survival in an industry that offers no mercy once images begin to fracture. Tonight's story is not gossip. It's a warning. A warning about how quickly love becomes damage control. About how effortlessly narratives are rewritten when power intervenes. And about how deadly silence becomes when truth is too costly to reveal. So, ask yourself this before you scroll away. What else has been hidden behind Hollywood's perfect smiles? Who else has been protected while others paid the price? And how many stories like this are still buried, waiting for the moment they erupt? Because one thing is certain, this story does not end here. New names will appear. New files will surface. New voices will break their silence. And when that happens, the reality we were sold may finally collapse. So stay alert, stay skeptical, and never forget, in this industry, the most dangerous secrets are not the ones that destroy careers.